Don't speak loud.
What was that?
These stories aren't your typical bedtime tales. They'll show you things that hide in the shadows. You should definitely not watch these alone at night.
What would you do if you were staying alone in a hotel room and then you hear a woman crying outside of your door in the middle of the night, and when you don't open it, you realize that she doesn't need help? This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about a woman who says that one work trip ended with something waiting outside for her in the hotel hallway. I travel a lot for work, so I stay in hotels by myself all the time. This happened in one of those boring highway hotels where every hallway looks the same and everything smells faintly like bleach and old air conditioning. I had checked in late and I was exhausted. I showered and I locked the door and I put the chain on and got in bed. I was just starting to fall asleep when I heard a woman crying in the hallway. And at first it sounded far enough away that I thought she'd pass my room. And then it stopped right outside my door. I sat up immediately, and she wasn't screaming, just this quiet, shaky crying like she was trying to hold it in and couldn't. I got out of bed and went to the peephole. She was further down the hall at first, maybe 2 doors away, bent forward a little with hair hanging over her face, and I noticed she was barefoot, and that was the first thing that fell off. Bare feet on hotel carpet. And then she said really softly, "Please." I stayed quiet, and then she said, "Can you help me?" I should have called the front desk right then. Instead, I made the mistake of speaking through the door. I asked if she was okay. And then the crying stopped instantly. It didn't fade, it just stopped. The silence after that made my whole body go cold. And then she said, "You almost opened it." I backed away from the door and I didn't say anything. I told myself maybe she heard me move or maybe she saw the light under the door. I was letting it get to me because I was tired and alone. And then she laughed. Quiet at first, and then while she was laughing, her voice started dropping lower. Not all at once, it just changed underneath the sound, like the crying voice had only been sitting over the real one. And then she said, "I know where you moved." I looked through the peephole again, and she was closer. I never heard any footsteps, and that's what I can't get over. 1 second she had been farther down the hall, and now she was standing right outside my room, still barefoot, and bent slightly forward. At first, I could only see part of her face because she was too close to the peephole. One eye and part of her mouth, and skin shiny around the lips. And then she slowly leaned back, and that was when I saw what was wrong with her. Her face looked almost human. That was the problem. It was close enough that my brain tried to make it normal for half a second. And then I started noticing the details. One eye sat a little lower than the other, and her skin looked too smooth across the cheeks and too tight around her mouth. Her lips were stretched like she had been learning smiling from watching people do it. And when she smiled wider, her cheeks didn't move with it. And then she said in that deeper voice, "You're behind the other door." I called the front desk, and my hand was shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. I told them there was a woman outside my room acting strange and I needed security or someone to come up. While I was still on the phone, I heard a soft tapping on the door. It wasn't pounding, just one fingernail tapping near the peephole. And then she said, "Let me look at you." I backed all the way towards the bathroom wall and stayed there. The tapping stopped, but then the doorknob moved. Slowly, like not rattling and not fighting the lock, just turning as far as it could, easing back and then turning again like she wanted me to hear her trying it. And a few seconds later, I heard the elevator open at the end of the hall and men's voices coming closer. A few seconds later, I heard the elevator open at the end of the hall and men's voices coming closer. Everything outside my door went quiet. Hotel security knocked first, and then somebody from the desk. I opened the door with the chain still on. The hallway was empty. There was nobody there. They checked both directions, they checked the stairwell, and even the ice machine area, but there was nothing. I kept telling them she had been right outside my room. The security guard asked if I maybe heard someone farther down the hall and got scared because I was tired. Then he leaned in toward my door and asked what the marks were. Around the peephole on the outside, there was greasy fingerprints. Long, grayish-looking smudges. And lower down near the handle, there was one wet mark dragged sideways like somebody had pressed their mouth there and then turned their head. I did not stay in that room. I made them move me immediately. Security walked me and my suitcase down to the elevator, and I remember finally starting to calm down a little because at that point I wasn't alone anymore. I kept telling myself whatever happened, at least I was leaving that hallway. The elevator doors opened and we stepped inside. I was facing forward, looking at the mirrored panel on the back wall while the security guard stood beside me. And in the mirror behind him, I saw her, standing in the hallway just outside the elevator, and barefoot, and still smiling. That same wrong face. One hand lifted slightly like she was about to wave. I spun around so fast I slammed into the rail, and the hallway behind us was empty. And then the elevator doors closed, and I didn't sleep the rest of that night.
The sound of that woman's laugh dropping into a deep growl is going to linger in my head for a while. I'd be stuck in place if I was alone in my room listening to that through the door. The thought of her standing there and waiting for me to open up is really bad to imagine. Then there's that detail about the wet mouth smudge on the handle. Ugh, that's so gross and scary at the same time. I don't know if I can ever use a hotel peephole without worrying about who's leaning their face against the other side. I'm definitely checking my door handle now.
Some of y'all know this already, but for those of you who don't know, my mother passed away when I was young. I was 16. And because of that, I went through a very, very, very dark time in my life. Particularly around the time I turned 18. My mother's death was really, really, really getting to me this one particular day. It was right before my birthday. It was like nobody remembered. And usually the only person who really do remember my birthday is my mother. So like I was in a very bad spot in my life. I had woke up with an attitude, like a bad attitude. So bad that like my god sister had called me to wake me up because we supposed to be going out. And she heard my voice and she was like, oh no, you can tell that demon to go back to sleep and try it again. I'm gonna call you in about an hour. And that pissed me off, but you know what? I got it because like for real, I woke up angry. It was an anger that I just could not put my finger on. Like I know why I'm upset and angry, but this is an anger that is not me. So what do? I go and I take a shower and I pray in the water because whatever the hell got a hold of me, I'm gonna need it to let it go. I'm gonna need it to let go because I don't never snap on my sister like that. Never. I felt so bad. I cried in the shower. That's how bad I felt. I get out the shower, I get dressed. It seemed like every little thing was wrong. Like, first of all, the heel on my shoe broke. Then I switched to some combat boots. Well, guess what? The zipper on the combat boots broke. So then I had to change up my whole outfit to match some other boots. And I didn't like those boots because of the way they made my foot look. But they went with the outfit, so whatever. I'm really not liking this outfit. I don't like these fucking shoes. Let me move on to my hair. I don't know about nobody else's hair, but my hair holds heat. It holds a crazy amount of heat. It gets so hot that there are beauticians who will literally put on the heat glove because my hair is hot. Not the utensil is hot, my hair is hot. So anyways, listen, my hair can hold a curl with absolutely no problems. This particular day don't want to hold shit. It don't want to do nothing. I tried to make it go straight, literally went over a section 2 times. 5 seconds later, it was poofing right back up. Didn't understand what was going on. I was really getting done with the day. And then I had to like really stop and take a deep breath. And I was like, okay, you got to focus because this is really not you. I got my hands on either side of the face bowl, I bow my head, I get to praying. And I'm for real, like, I need whatever is around me to reveal itself, because this ain't right and you're not gonna ruin my day. I'm already having a hard time. Who are you and what do you want? Something whispers in my ear, chaos. Whoa now. We need to go back to go, try again. We need to redo. What happened? So I hear a chuckle, like a low menacing laugh, but it's pleased. And I look up in the mirror and I see me, but it ain't me. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I know I see me, but me don't normally have black eyes. And me don't have a smile that go from ear to ear. Me has a pointy chin, but not one that is razor sharp. I am looking at me, but me is not me. Who the fuck are you? Because we are not we. The thing cock its head to the side and it says, what do you mean? I am you and you are me. We are we. I've always been here. You don't recognize me? Now I'm freaking the fuck out. Cause bitch, why are you talking back? Why are you talking back? The being in the window, in the mirror say, how do you not recognize me? I am you. And I said, no. I don't like this. What did I do? I opened up a portal. She said, no, you didn't. You just refused to let me come out and play. I just want to come out and play. And it was something about the way that she said it. Like, it was something about the way that she said it that really, for real, made a chill go up my spine, around my brain, back down to the tip of my toes, and do it all over again. I know this voice. I don't want to hear this voice. I don't even want to face the voice. So I walk out the bathroom. As I walk out the bathroom, my god sister is walking through my front door. And I'm just looking at her like, oh shit, I ain't got no time to get rid of this. Like this, I'm gonna have to either deal with this and hide it for the rest of the day, or I'm gonna have to do a ritual and she's just gonna have to bear witness. And the way she said my name, I don't know why it pissed the being off, but I guess it was because it wasn't being acknowledged. So when she was like, hey, Katie did, I looked at her and I was like, excuse you, it's Kat. And then she looked at me and she was like, oh, fuck no. Phoenix, what is you doing here? I'm sorry, what? Who? What are you? Ma'am? My god sister said, oh, you ain't think I would recognize you? Girl, I see you a million miles away. Phoenix, go back to sleep. Leave her alone. Today is her day. Leave her alone. Whatever it is, let it go until tomorrow. Now, me and Phoenix is frozen in time and space because what the fuck you mean you know who the fuck you looking at? How do you know the difference? We squint our eyes and my sister looked back at us and she was like, oh, you wondering how I know? First and foremost, Catherine's eyes are brown or green. Phoenix's eyes are black, damn near reddish looking. And you look like you finna kill something. On top of the fact that normally, yes, Kat is tall, but when you're coming to play, she looked like a giant. So I know something is going on. Go back to sleep, leave my sister alone. Pissed us clean the fuck off. Because first of all, who is you talking to? Why is you even, like she was rolling her eyes and rolling her neck and her fingers wagging in the air. And girl, who is you talking to? You know what? I just turned around and I walked back in the bathroom and I started praying again because like, what you mean you didn't seen her before? Why you ain't tell me that you didn't seen her before? I have done everything that I possibly could to shield my god sister from Phoenix. And what you mean you didn't seen her? Excuse me, what? A couple of more deep breaths and seriously calming myself down. I look back in the mirror and Phoenix said back to me, why you just can't let me play? And to that I say, because bitch, you're chaos. You are pure chaos. And I ain't got no time. I ain't got it. I ain't got it. Today is supposed to be a good day. We're gonna have a good day, and that's gonna be it. And then the craziest thing that I ever seen happen was that Phoenix started reaching through the mirror, and her hand was on my throat. And now I'm battling with my inner self. I don't know what the fuck to do. I was so mad at so many different things that I wasn't even saying out loud, but My sister stood by the bathroom door and she named every last one of them off. And it shocked me to my core because I had not talked to her about none of this, but here she is. Here she is, rattling all this stuff off. And at that very moment, Phoenix felt seen. And not just seen, she also felt heard. And then for my sister to like reach out, like literally reach out into the ether and say, Phoenix, I hear you. That's why I'm here, remember? You not alone. And like really slammed her back into her cage. It was absolutely insane. It was a lock that I couldn't even put onto Phoenix cage myself. There are so many times where I lose control and the first thing I think of is my god sister Marnissa. I love this woman to death. I looked in the mirror, Phoenix looked at me, she said, fine, go have a good time. I'll be back later.
Looking into the mirror and seeing your own face with black reddish eyes sounds like the worst possible thing. She said the reflection had a really sharp chin and this huge pointy smile that didn't belong to her. I'm still hung up on the idea where that hand actually came through the glass to grab her throat. It is one thing to see something scary, but letting it touch you is on another level. I'm not sure I'd ever be able to use a mirror without wondering if my own face is about to start talking back to me or touching me. That sister showing up was some serious luck.
When I was just a boy, I had one dream: to finally meet the real Santa Claus. That December, I'd been completely obsessed with photography and video and had been recording and taking pictures of everything in sight. My friends made fun of me constantly for still believing in Santa. I was a stubborn little boy and I knew for a fact that if I truly believed enough, that I would indeed see something amazing after the clock struck midnight and became Christmas Day. And I was right. Sort of. As I said, carrying around a camera was my thing. That year on Christmas Eve, I'd planned to be the first child on Earth to get concrete proof of Santa's existence. In my young mind, I'd seen newspapers and news channels around the globe showing my evidence. They would interview me, the little boy who'd proven everyone wrong, and maybe then people would finally start to believe. That evening, my mother and father took turns tucking me into bed before shutting off the lights and heading back to their room. I've got an itchy nose!
Oh dear, someone's talking about
Oh, is that what that means? After hearing their door close gently with a click, I headed downstairs to scout the living room. As the hours passed uneventfully, I moved the camera around to record various locations: the fireplace, the outside window, the kitchen where I'd placed the poorly made gingerbread cookies. Don't judge me, I tried my best. Time continued to pass, and it wasn't until I first heard the clock strike midnight that something unexpected happened. I heard the basement door open, slowly. That was odd. I thought Santa was supposed to come from the chimney. Part of me wanted to rush over and greet him, but I found another larger part of myself telling me to hide and wait and see what happens next. I chose my parents' new couch in the corner of the room as my hiding spot, running behind and peeking ever so slightly around its corner and towards the Christmas tree. Nothing happened for a few moments, and I was beginning to wonder if I'd imagined the sound of the basement door creaking open altogether. But then I heard the whistling. But it wasn't jingle bells or anything like that. It wasn't cheerful, and it certainly didn't contain the holiday spirit. The snow had started falling more steadily outside, and for some reason that odd whistling had suddenly made me realise how completely isolated the three of us were out here. My father had bought the small cabin some time ago, the nearest neighbour being half a mile away or so. This was my first, and I had been very excited about being snowed in for a few days. That was until the thought occurred to me of being snowed in with something else. Something that had no business being there. The wind began to push against our secluded home as well, seeming to hit all sides at once. Wow, my parents could sleep through anything, it seemed. My eyes pulled away from the chaotic weather outside my home and back towards the basement door, and then I saw it coming closer. The figure was cloaked and seemed to float just above the living room door. Did I think about screaming? Yeah, I did. Looking back, though, I'll give myself credit. I stayed calm, and perhaps this still was Santa, after all. I decided to wait and see what happened. It seemed that the tall figure hadn't seen me peeking out from behind the couch. Whatever it was, it began to whistle again, and this time I was able to identify the tune. Silent Night. I realise how insane this next part is going to sound, but as I watched the tall figure near the Christmas tree, I could hear it begin to sniff deeply. The tree swayed and shook against the force of the creature's nostrils, and then it began to speak. Come out, wherever you are. A shiver went up my spine. He'd seen me. There'd be no hiding anymore. Taking a deep breath, I summoned the courage to stand. Closer. I took a small step. Closer. I heeded its words, walking forward until the tall figure stood directly in front of me. I felt small in its shadow, smaller than I've ever felt. Are you him? The creature made a soft, almost inaudible noise. Perhaps it was laughter, and then pulled the cloak away to reveal itself. I fainted. When I came to, the creature was still standing where it had been, a soft grin plastered to its face. I said nothing, only staring up at the creature. Though I've tried to forget its form, I can still remember it clearly. It was thin, terribly thin, and its face was beyond imagining. Though its teeth were clearly visible, I could see no eyes, and what looked like thorns protruding from the crest of its head. To answer your question, no, I am not Santa Claus. The creature knelt down near me, and I could feel its icy breath push against my face and eyes. But I know him, it said. You do? I asked. The creature nodded. Of course. He's my brother. The news that this terrifying monster was the brother of Santa took a long time for my childhood brain to process, at the end of which I was probably even more confused than before. How? I asked. The creature paused. Well, I don't normally share such things, but I admire your courage. It smiled, showing its sharp teeth, and then continued. For every good act in this world, there is an evil one. For every kind gift, there must be an unkind. I bring balance to the good that my brother spreads. I bring evil, I whispered, finishing his words. You're a smart little boy. So far, I'm glad I haven't eaten you. My mind churned again, and the next question popped into my mind quickly. So what evil have you brought us? There was a long silence before it replied. You are very wise. Are you sure you want to know? Very well. Though my gifts will not take effect on this day, their influence will be felt throughout the next year and beyond. It pulled out the sack that followed closely behind and set it on the floor before me. There was only one gift inside, which upon closer look had both my father and my mother's names written neatly on a dark card that sat on top of the box. Open, if you dare. The lights flickered on and off as I began to unwrap the small box. I laid the wrapping paper down neatly piece by piece on top of the tree's red and white Christmas skirt. Looking up at the creature, I said 2 words. I'm afraid. Though I still could not see the creature's eyes, it seemed to gaze at me nonetheless. It seemed to be thinking as it cocked its head from side to side. Look upon my face, little child. I cannot change my form, any more than you can change the fate of your family. All I can do is bear it. Though still afraid, I was suddenly overcome with a great sympathy for the creature. I'm sorry, I said. It seemed taken aback for a moment before replying, Don't be fooled, little child, I am not fully innocent. The box before me broke open, revealing a blinding shine of dark purple. I looked deep into the calling purple, into the worlds unseen. I saw the creatures of my nightmares. First of all, I saw my parents. It was a rainy winter day as my father drove home from work, his briefcase on the passenger seat and a worried look in his eyes as he squinted through the windshield. The rain came down in sheets. He couldn't see the large semi that had gently pulled up beside him. I believe that's a car. It drifted closer into his lane and then, Stop, I don't want to see! I cried up to the creature, but it was too late. I saw everything. Why are you showing me this? I asked. As I looked up, I saw that the creature had disappeared. That was a couple of years ago now, and it's Christmas time again. Every time my dad leaves the house swinging his keys, I'm scared he will never come back. I've just heard a knock on the door, though. My mum's answered it. I can hear the faint sound of a siren outside over the Christmas carols on the radio. Now I can hear her crying, and I know what's happened before anyone.
I've got a cold feeling down my back at the ending. What? Santa's brother? That's a messed up twist on the holiday story. Most kids just want toys, but this poor guy saw exactly how his parent died. The way he describes the creature's thin face and thorns is bad enough. But then it shows him, his dad squinting through the windshield right before the crash. Just hearing the sirens outside while his mom cries brings it home. It's like he's been living in a slow motion wreck for years. I don't think I'll ever view the holidays like I used to after hearing about that dark purple light in the gift box.
Last night, a mass shooting took place in Shreveport, Louisiana. 10 people were shot, 8 of whom were children. None of the children made it. The man responsible was 31-year-old Shamar Elkins, who who was the father to 7 out of those 8 children. That neighborhood in Shreveport is usually relatively quiet on Sunday mornings, but yesterday morning was different. Police responded to reports of loud bangs in the neighborhood just after 6 a.m. local time on April 19th, and what they found when they arrived at the scene was absolutely horrific. It has been reported that the incident all started on Harrison Street, where Shamar's wife was shot. She is only 34 years old and the mother of his children. She is severely injured, but she did survive. However, Shamar did not stop there, because afterwards he went to another home on West 79th Street where he shot the 8 children and a second adult victim. Like I said, 7 out of the 8 children were his. It sounds like the 8th was a cousin, and the second adult victim is the mother of that 8th child. She also survived. 7 children were inside of the house. An 8th was found dead on the roof after apparently trying to escape. Another child, a 13-year-old boy who was also in the house, opened up a second-story window and jumped off. He suffered some broken bones, but he was able to run to a neighbor's house to then call 911. Some of the other children tried to get away from the back door of the house when everything started happening, but they did not make it. Afterwards, Shamar Elkins ran. He fled toward a tire shop. A neighbor saw him running on a security camera. He then stole a vehicle and he sped off. By that point, authorities had been called and dispatched, and it led to a police chase. They were able to catch up to him, and police then opened fire. Shamar was then pronounced deceased at the scene. But why? Why such a horrible attack? Shamar Elkins was born in 1995, and he had been living in Shreveport for a very long time. He served in the Louisiana Army National Guard from August 2013 to August 2020 as a signal support system specialist and a fire support specialist before he then left the Army. He also did have a criminal history. He was arrested in March of 2019 on a charge of illegal use of weapons on school property, and he had also been arrested for driving when he should not have been driving back in 2019. It also sounds like he struggled very badly with his mental health. Not only that, but he was also having a very hard time with his relationship with the mother of his children. In the days leading up to April 19th, he had spoken to his parents and told them that he didn't want to be here anymore because his wife wanted a divorce and he was, quote, drowning in dark thoughts, unquote. His stepdad tried to give him some words of encouragement, but allegedly Shamar responded with something along the lines of, quote, some people don't come back from their demons, end quote. A cousin of the family has also come out to say that Shamar and his wife were in the middle of separating and they were due to go to court today, April 20th. So could that have been a motive? We don't know. There's no way to know, but it sounds like it. On Easter Sunday earlier this month, what is that, like 2 weeks ago, Shamar posted a picture of himself with his kids on Facebook saying that he had attended Easter church service for the first time with all of his children. 4 days later, he also reposted an inspirational quote on Facebook that read, quote, Dear God, today I ask you to help me guard my mind and my emotions, end quote. So it sounds like he was in a really, not excusing his behavior, by the way, do not get that confused, but it sounds like he was in a very scary, dark place in his head. Why he decided to take out everything that he was feeling on his own 7 kids and an additional child and 2 other adult victims, it will never make sense to me. The reaction from Shreveport, as you can imagine, was immediate and it was devastating. And of course, this literally just happened quite literally last night, so more information, it feels like, is coming out every single hour. But the one thing that we know for sure is that this has broken the hearts of so many people, not only family members, but also just residents of the community. Police Chief Wayne Smith said, quote, I just don't know what to say. My heart is just taken aback. I cannot begin to imagine how such an event could occur, end quote. And the mayor at a conference stated, quote, It's a terrible morning in Shreveport, and we all know my heart goes out to this entire community for the tragic event that has taken place this morning. He described the shooting as, quote, a tragic situation, maybe the worst tragic situation we've ever had, end quote. And then he went on to say, our community is grieving the unimaginable loss of innocent children. There are no words that can make sense out of it and no distance that shields us from it. It is devastating. 8 children who will never get to grow old.
This whole situation is really hard to hear. The detail about the kid on the roof is pretty tragic, especially since he was just trying to survive. Then you have the 13-year-old who actually jumped from the 2nd floor to get help. That's a lot of pressure for a teenager to handle, while his world is falling apart. Shamar's social media posts about this demon and guarding his mind feels so much more scary now. It's like he knew something bad was coming, but couldn't stop himself. I don't think there's any way to entirely process something this terrible for the grieving families.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. My father has spent his entire life proving people wrong about ghosts. which is why the one story he can't explain is the only one that truly scares me. My father is one of the most logical people I've ever met. He's the kind of person who always has an explanation for everything. Strange noise in the house, pipes. Shadow in the hallway, bad lighting. Someone claiming their place is haunted, overactive imagination. He's a hardcore atheist, a science-minded skeptic, and honestly, kind of ruthless when it comes to debunking paranormal stories. Growing up, anytime I told him something creepy I saw online, he'd immediately tear it apart with logic. So when he told me the story for the first time, well, he was in college at the time in India. Back then, he lived in a cramped little rental house with 7 other students. 8 grown men squeezed into a tiny old house together because it was cheap. The place sat near the edge of town, surrounded by narrow roads, old concrete homes, and tangled electrical wires overhead. Power outages were common, the summers were brutal, and at night, the heat became unbearable. My father said they usually slept with every single window open just to survive those scorching nights. And every evening after classes, he and his roommates would get off a bus and walk the same route home. And every single night, they would pass one particular house. It was a modest 2-story home with a flat rooftop terrace. And on that terrace was always the same girl. Young, maybe 16 or 17. And she would always slowly pace back and forth while reading from a textbook. At first, none of them thought much of it, but after weeks of seeing her every evening in almost the exact same spot doing the exact same thing, the group started making jokes about it. One said she was preparing for medical exams. Another joked that she was probably smarter than all of them combined. My father can remember her clearly, because she was always there, burned into his memory. And then one night, something changed. It was sometime during the hottest part of the summer, and the electricity had gone out earlier in the evening, so the house was dark, except for the moonlight coming through the windows. Most of the roommates had already fallen asleep, scattered across the living room floor. My father was sleeping near the front window, the one that directly faced the neighboring house across the street. Sometime in the middle of the night, maybe because of the immense heat, or maybe something else, he woke up. Immediately, he realized that something was wrong. The window beside him was shut, completely. That made no sense. Nobody would have closed that window, not in that heat. The air inside the room felt thick and suffocating. Everyone else was asleep, sweating in the darkness, so naturally, my father assumed one of the roommates must have closed it without thinking, so he sat up and unlatched the window. The second he pushed it open, warm night air rushed into the room, and across the street, he saw her, the girl on the terrace. At first, he didn't think anything of it. It looked normal. He's seen her hundreds of times at this point. Just her silhouette pacing beneath the moonlight, back and forth, as always. But the longer he looked at her pacing form, the more he noticed the strange details. The house was completely dark. No terrace light, no bedroom light, nothing. There was no way she could possibly be reading a textbook. Yet still, she held it open in front of her face while pacing. And then he noticed the pacing itself. Wrong. Too fast. Not running exactly, but unnaturally quick. Her movements looked jerky and uneven. My father sat frozen, staring at her, trying to understand what he was seeing. Then suddenly, she stopped moving. As if someone had flipped a switch and shut her off. Immediately, he said it happened so abruptly that it frightened him. And slowly, her head turned until she was staring directly at him across the dark street. My father told me the feeling that hit him in that moment is impossible to describe. He felt as though whatever was standing over there already knew that he was watching. He said that even from a distance, he could tell something about her face just looked wrong. It was too pale, too empty, and then she smiled. A slow, unnatural smile that seemed to stretch wider the longer that he looked. My father slammed the window shut instantly, hard enough to wake one of his roommates. When they asked him what was going on, my father just lay back down, pretending it was nothing. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. Every few minutes, he glanced toward the window, expecting to hear tapping on the glass or to see her standing outside. But morning finally came. Sunlight filled the house, and eventually everyone started getting ready for class. My father tried convincing himself that he'd imagined everything that had happened the night before. Maybe he'd just been half asleep. Maybe the darkness distorted what he saw. But while they were leaving the house, one of the neighbors stopped them outside and casually mentioned something strange. Apparently, the family across the street had moved away over a week earlier. The house was completely empty and had been for days. In fact, according to the neighbor, the terrace door had been chained shut ever since they left.
A smile like that would be impossible to ever forget. Just standing there in the dark after pacing for so long is enough to keep anyone awake. Her father was only trying to get some fresh air and ended up locked in a gaze with something that shouldn't have been here. The detail about that door being chained shut the whole time is what makes this seem so strange. There was no way for a person to get onto that terrace. He watched her for weeks and she just stops and looked right at him. I'm definitely sleeping with my window locked and the lights on tonight.
Welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill. The series is brought to you by All Things Spooky and Ungodly Amounts of Paranormal Activity. Different necklace today, but I got this one before I got the other one, and this one came with two, and they are stackable, and they look really cute together. It's down here if you want it. Is this lighting offensive? Am I doing too much? Let me know in the comments. Now onto the story. This was back in 2012. I was 18 at the time, going on to 19, and moved in with my boyfriend who was 22. We were living at his family's house, 4-bedroom, small home. We had the second bedroom of the second floor. This is important for context. In that bedroom, we had a small door that was a small storage space. It was slanted, so to go in, you had to remain ducked. The wall on the other side of that small storage place was the side of the roof on the front of the house. This is why the space was slanted. Our headboard was up against the wall of the small storage place, and the door was maybe 2 to 3 feet away from the left side of the bed. One day, his mom asked me to retrieve a small box that she had in there. This was her room before we moved in, so she had some stuff in that storage space. I walked in and she waited behind me, and I jumped and gasped at what I saw. I want to say it was a 3 to 4 foot porcelain doll standing in the corner of the storage. 3 to 4 foot? Like a person tall? She laughed and said, "Sorry, I forgot that doll was in here." "Yeah, I bet you did." I said, "Oh my God, why is it there?" She responded, "Oh, it's the landlord's doll. They didn't want to take it, so they gave it to me." My motherfucking ass. Take that bitch. Burn it. Throw it in the trash. Bury it. I don't give a fuck. It ain't staying here. I said, "Oh, well, why is it tucked away?" Her smile faded and said, "Well, I had it out on display here, but it gave me the creeps." Yeah? So I stored it away, and I said, "Why not get rid of it if it freaked you out?" Logic. She said, "Well, it's pretty, and I didn't want to throw it away, but I can see that you're unsettled by it, so I'll remove it soon." Then she knocked the doll down so it laid flat to face down on the floor. Yeah. Let's just piss it off while we're there. I told my boyfriend about it, and he said, "She's never got rid of it? It's in here?" I said, yeah, take a look." He said, "No, thank you." So I asked, "Did something happen with that doll?" He said, "No, it's creepy, that's all." You're fucking lying. You're fucking lying, and I don't like that. I don't like that you're lying. So I asked, "Can you take it out?" And he said, "No, I don't want to ruin it and have my mom come for me for a stupid, creepy doll." This should have been a red flag, but teenage naive me. Fast forward maybe a few weeks to a month later, I forget about the doll. Really? Because how the fuck do you forget a 3 to 4 foot tall porcelain creepy ass fucking doll that's hiding in your room? We used to love watching scary movies, but this particular night we watched a kids movie and went to bed. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to my boyfriend whispering to me, "Did you hear that? Don't speak loud." I whispered back, "What?" when I heard scratches on the wall from the inner corner. I slept close to the window wall and he slept on the left close to the small door of the storage space. Good. So he can get attacked by the creepy doll since he didn't want to fucking get rid of it. The scratches on the wall went from the inner corner to above my head all the way to the door, and the door busted open as if someone kicked it. I can't unhear those scratches to this day, and this was 14 years ago. I said, "Oh my God." He shushed me as he covered my eyes and said, "Baby, just pray." Bitch, where's my Bible? Jesus, show yourself. It's me again. So I did, too afraid to move, and ended up passing out. The next day, we tried to reason about what it was, but it was no one in the house. It was impossible. They would have had to be on the roof. We had no attic and the roof was slanted. I said to him it had to be the doll. He said, shut up, you're crazy. It don't move. And that's why you sleep by the door where it's hidden. He checked and claimed that it was still on the floor, face down. He started placing heavy objects in front of the door because we found it open multiple times when no one was home. Fast forward a few weeks later, his sister came in searching for a handbag and went in and asked me to go as well because she was also scared of the doll. As we were leaving, I noticed the doll was now sitting facing forward. I told her and she said, what the fuck? It must be my mom just playing tricks. A few days later, he went in because it sounded like something fell and he told me, I don't know what mess you guys left. Let me go see before something breaks and my mother becomes upset. I peeked in and the doll was still sitting, now facing the door. September comes around after all the BS I endured with that man. I decided to leave him and move out. I was grabbing my things and the last things that I had were in that storage. I went in, pulled out what I could when I saw the doll standing closer to the door. I ran out and left the rest there and never went back. That house was haunted and that man was being haunted constantly. I went home with so much trauma and fear of the dark and any noise at night because the activity at that house was heavy. I still see things but ignore them so they leave me alone, but this was the scariest encounter that I had. I have many more, but I thought that this would be perfect for your spooky scary story time. And it was. Speaking of a doll, my mom used to have this moose that like stood out. I don't know what was her obsession with moose, okay? But she had this stuffed moose and it was like standing up. My brother was so afraid of that fucking moose. And I tell you, every time that we would go into a room, that bitch would be there. It turns out that my mom was moving it because she knew that it scared him. I didn't even know that until like way later, but I wasn't like scared of it like that. That shit was just funny as fuck. So, I mean, she could have been playing pranks, but if she was getting the heebie-jeebies from it as well, and everyone else in that fucking house was too, you're hearing scratching and nobody else, please, that doll is possessed. Where is Zach Baggins to take that bitch when you need it? Anyway, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being like scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. I will see you all at the next episode.
A 3-foot doll standing in a storage closet is a total deal breaker. I'd be out of there the second I saw it in the corner. Then she hears those scratching moving along the walls, right above her head. That's way too close to her. It's like the doll was right there behind the wall whenever she was moving. The boyfriend just tells her to pray rights after the door literally kicks open. How do you even go back to sleep after this? The thought of that thing slowly turning to face the door every time they left the room is more than I could take.
Need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. I rented a room in a party house that already had someone living in it. When I was 23, I found myself drifting, renting rooms, 6 months here, a year there, bouncing around from one place to another, while I took time to try and figure life out. My drifting eventually led me to this old Victorian-style house with 4 other roommates. The rent was cheap, the house was big, and it could never feel lonely with all those other people around, so at first, it seemed fun. It felt like a perfect situation. Soon, though, I found out how the things in the house went. Every weekend turned into these all-night parties that would bleed into the morning and make it impossible to sleep. Music would shake the walls, people I didn't know were wandering in and out, smoke in the air, and bodies moving under red lights. And I swear, there was an energy in that house. A heavy and dark energy. Like something stale and wrong inhabited its corners. Something predatory and possessive. The feeling I would get in that house would remind me of those underground vampire clubs from old movies. Beautiful on the surface, enticing you to come in, but once you do, you realize that it's rotting underneath. After a couple months of living there, the dreams started. The first one I experienced didn't feel like a dream at all. In it, I was wandering through the house at night. There was no music, no roommates, no lights, just a silence that I had never experienced in that home since moving in. In the dream, I was walking slowly down the stairs, feeling like I wasn't supposed to be awake, like I had slipped into something hidden that house was holding onto. And then I saw her, a woman moving across the living room wearing a black dress. walking comfortably across the space like she belonged there, like she owned it. I tried to focus on her face, thinking maybe it was somebody I recognized. Someone from the endless stream of people that would come in and out of this place every night, but the second I did, terror slammed into me. Instantly, I felt like I had seen something that I wasn't meant to. So I turned and ran. Up the stairs, down the hallway, back into my room. In the dream, I jumped into my bed. And that exact moment that my body hit the mattress, I woke up, breathless and panicked, as if I had actually just run there. I stayed awake for the rest of the night, staring into the dark, trying to work out what I had just experienced, and trying to convince myself that it really was only just a dream. Deep down, though, I just couldn't be convinced. A week or so later, during one of our usual get-togethers downstairs, one of my roommates casually turned to me and said, "You know, people always have problems in your room. Other people who had lived here and had it." And then she laughed, like it was nothing. And I asked her what she meant. She told me the owner of the house, one of our other roommates, had grown up there in that same house, and her grandmother had died in the room that I was staying in. My room. After hearing that, the dreams got worse. The second one was even more strange than the first. I was standing in the bathroom, just getting out of the shower, steam on the mirror, and as I reached up to wipe it away, I noticed it. Around my eyes was this black substance, like sludge, thick and oily, and it was crawling around my sockets. I manically started scrubbing at it, washing, panicking, desperate, but it wouldn't come off, no matter how hard I rubbed. And as I started to panic even more, this overwhelming dread came over me. Violation, like something was trying to cover me, to claim me. The next second, I woke up gasping, heart pounding, sweat pouring, and I remember touching my face in the dark to make sure my eyes weren't obscured. And once everything checked out, I barely slept after that. Not long after that dream, I moved out. As soon as I left, I couldn't help but notice that I felt relieved, like a heaviness had lifted, like something let me go, like I escaped. And it gave me the false confidence that whatever weirdness I had experienced there was over now. But it wasn't. Because after I left, I had one last dream, and this one was the worst of all. I was at my great-grandparents' house, a place that I had spent so much of my childhood at. A place tied to safety, to warmth, to family, something seared into my memory. In the dream, I was a kid again, running in the backyard like I used to. And I saw my great-grandfather and my grandfather standing by the side of the house burning leaves and branches. I remember asking, "What are you doing?" And my grandpa looked at me and said, "We're keeping the bad energy out." I didn't understand what that meant at the time, so I started walking around the side of the house. And through a window, I saw her. A girl, sitting alone in the middle of a room. She was facing away from me, so all I could see was her long, dark hair, and I noted that she sat still. Too still. Unnaturally still. And I kept staring, trying to understand why she terrified me. Then she turned. Abruptly, like her neck would snap with any more force, and she looked right at me. Her eyes were completely black. The same black from her hair, the same black from the sludge around my eyes in the last dream, the same black I could feel crawling around that house that I had just fled. And I remember thinking in that second that she looked at me, she sees me. Not I see her. She sees me. Every nerve in my body lit up with fear as I watched her open her mouth wide, and she screamed. A horrible scream. The room around her began shaking violently, and as the walls trembled and the windows rattled, the dream began to collapse around us. And I woke up, sitting upright, sweating and shaking, certain something had been in the room with me, that she had been in the room with me. After that, the dream stopped completely. I never had one again, and I've wondered since, Was leaving that house what saved me? Or was that final dream something else? Because I still think about my grandfather's words. We're keeping the bad energy out. So, is that just a dream? Or were my ancestors warning me, protecting me, keeping something from crossing over?
So her roommate just casually dropped that the owner's grandma just died in her exact bedroom, like it was a normal piece of gossip. I would have quit that place immediately. Then she talks about that thick black sludge crawling around her eyes in the mirror. She's scrubbing her face, and it just keeps sticking to her. That's too gross for words. Feels like she's being marked or claimed by something she can't even see. I'd be so miserable trying to sleep after that. That feeling of getting violated in your own place is what makes the story feel so real. I'm glad she left.
2009, 15-year-old Christina Grimmie finally caved and made her own YouTube channel. For years, her friends and family had been begging her to do this because Christina had this incredible singing voice that they wanted the world to hear, but Christina had always been hesitant because she was a bit of an introvert. But that year, Christina was feeling more outgoing, and so she took the plunge, she makes this channel, and in July of that year, she uploads her first 2 songs. They were both cover songs, and she was really proud of them, but when she uploaded them, they didn't get very many views. And so Christina probably was not very excited about making more videos. But a month later, she found herself really enjoying the song Party in the USA by Miley Cyrus, and so she was singing it all the time and humming it all the time, and so finally she said, okay, I'll just film myself covering that song. And so she records herself singing this song, she uploads it to her YouTube channel, her 3rd video, and she thinks no one's going to see it because her first 2 videos no one really saw. But this video is different. It went viral almost immediately, and millions of people saw it, and they loved it. Christina couldn't believe it, even though her friends and family had been telling her all along, you have this great voice, you gotta share it with the world. That's different than actually seeing the results of the world saying, you're really great, we love your voice. And so she saw this huge opportunity, and she began uploading more and more music to her channel, and more of her videos went viral. Over the next 4 years, she amassed over 2 million subscribers on her YouTube channel. She put out her own album, and she even went on tour with the mega celebrity pop star Selena Gomez. In 2014, Christina auditioned for the TV singing competition called The Voice. This show only allows a very small number of contestants who are all incredibly talented musicians. They get screened really aggressively before the competition even starts. But despite the very intense competition she was up against, Christina still managed to finish 3rd overall in this competition. Now, she might have been a little bit let down that she didn't finish 1st, but that show did wonders for her career because the judges of this competition were mega celebrity musicians, and every time Christina was on TV doing her performance for the competition, the judges would be raving about how talented she was, and that even if she doesn't win this competition, someone's going to sign her. She's so incredible. And then sure enough, shortly after that competition ended, Christina was signed to a major record label. But despite being considered a star by the masses, Christina still very much viewed herself as being a YouTuber first, which meant despite her mainstream popularity and fame, she continued to upload songs and vlogs to her YouTube channel because she wanted to stay connected to her fans. YouTubers often upload videos that appear very amateur, like not professionally produced. It almost looks like anybody could have picked up their phone and filmed that video. And YouTubers tend to be very candid and show their personality in their videos. And so it makes YouTubers, especially these really popular ones, seem very real and raw and relatable. Unlike traditional celebrities that are kind of outside of society, living in their mansions, living a totally elite and different lifestyle. YouTubers feel like they're your friends. And this was definitely the case with Christina. On her videos, she came off as very humble and gracious and kind and friendly, and so her fans truly adored her. By June of 2016, Christina was still growing in popularity when she was asked to be the opening act for this concert in Orlando, Florida that was happening later that month. She agreed, and then on the day of the concert, which was June 10th, she posted to her social media this kind of shout out to all of her fans saying, hey, if you're in the Orlando, Florida area, come out to my show. And then after the show, I'm going to stick around and sign autographs and meet you guys. That night, night, the venue where this concert was happening was jam-packed, and most of the people were there for Christina, not the main act. And so Christina, she goes on stage, she has this incredible performance, the main act goes on stage, and then around 10 p.m., the concert ends, at which point Christina comes back out from behind stage and went right out into the crowd and began meeting her fans and hugging them and signing autographs and taking pictures. And then at 10:24 p.m., a man who was a fan of Christina's walked down from the back of the venue and kind of awkwardly gestured that he kind of wanted to get a hug. And Christina saw that, and so she smiled and she walked up to him. She opened her arms to give him a big hug. And when she got just a couple of feet away from him, he drew a pistol and he fired 4 shots into her head and into her body. Christina's brother, Mark, he was standing right nearby and he saw the attack. And so he tackled the shooter and he was trying to get control of this guy. But at some point, the shooter managed to wriggle free, and then he stood up and he kind of walked backwards until he was literally up against this wall looking at the sea of people that are totally horrified. People are screaming and running and no one knows what he's going to do next. And then the shooter just raises the gun, puts it to his head, and pulls the trigger. There were people in the audience who were medically trained who rushed over to Christina and they began performing CPR on her, but there really wasn't anything anyone could do. She would die that night at the hospital. Her killer was a 27-year-old man named Kevin Loibel. He, like many people, had become a Christina superfan, but his infatuation with her became a totally unhealthy obsession. And when it eventually dawned on him that he most likely would never have a romantic relationship with Christina, he came to the conclusion that if I can't have her, no one can have her. And so when Christina put that post out on social media asking people to come to Orlando to see her show and meet her after the show, he took that as an opportunity to go kill her. And so he lived in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is 120 miles away. And so he sees this post on social media. He grabs his 2 pistols, some extra ammunition. He gets a large hunting knife, and then he calls a cab. The cab drives him 120 miles northeast to Orlando, Florida. And then he gets into the venue with his weaponry because there weren't metal detectors and no one was frisking people as they came inside. And so he was in the back of the venue during the show. And then when it was over, he kind of lingered back, allowing other fans to go up and, kind of mob Christina. And then when there was a lull and there were less people down there with her, he strode right down the aisle and he ended her life.
She just wanted to be there for the people who supported her from the start. It's sad how she opened her arms for a hug, and he just took advantage of that kindness to hurt her. I mean, the picture of him standing in the back of the crowd really stays with me. He's just watching her perform, knowing what he's about to do. You don't expect a night like that to end in such a disaster. It's so unfair that someone who gave so much to her fans was treated this way. I don't think I'll ever think of a fan event like I did before.
About 7 years ago, my husband and I were having a movie night in the living room with our sons, ages 7 and 6. We brought our big king-size mattress into the living room so we could all sleep on it. My daughter was 2 at the time and went to bed earlier, so she was in her room sleeping in her crib. Everyone was sleeping at this point, and I was the last person awake by the time the movie was over, so I got up to shut everything off and went to go check on my daughter. She was asleep in her crib, so I shut the door and went and laid on the bed with my husband and sons. About 20 seconds after shutting my eyes, my son kicked me in his sleep, so I opened my eyes and sat up a bit to adjust myself away from him. I noticed something out of the corner of my eye on the couch, and when I looked over, it was my daughter sitting on the couch with her back towards me, staring at the black TV screen. Immediately, I knew it wasn't her because she was too small to crawl out of her crib, and even if she could, I would have heard some sort of noise. But the house was dead quiet. I stared at this thing for a long time, and I even pinched myself and blinked many times, and it never moved or disappeared. I finally just had to hide under the covers because I was so freaked out. When I peeked out 10 minutes later, the thing was gone. No clue what that thing was, but I haven't seen it since. Hell to the no.
What was that?
For background context, when I was little, I would sleepwalk very often, and if anyone spoke to me during this, I would become violent and throw things or yell at them. I would never remember these episodes until someone told me about it in detail. Then I would remember it faintly, the way you would remember a dream. As I grew up, this stopped. However, one day after high school, my sister and I were in the living room. She was a senior and I was a freshman. I was taking a nap on the couch and she was watching TV next to me. During my nap, I sat straight up and asked my sister, "Who's that?" And my sister replied, "Who's who?" It was just us home at the time. I looked to the other couch and said, "Wait, where did she go?" And I went right back to sleep. This was the first episode of sleepwalking I had had since elementary school. Like before, I didn't remember until she told me later that night. I remembered that I saw a woman sitting on the other couch just looking at us and smiling. We forgot about this until now, about 6 years later, and that woman looks exactly like my sister does now. When this first happened, my sister had very long hair and never wore makeup. The woman I saw had short hair and was very feminine, which is exactly how my sister looks now. Okay, so I don't know if that one is really like scary, like in like a bad way. Maybe that was like her sister from like a parallel universe or something, or her sister's like higher self, like coming and checking on them. Kind of creepy, yes, but also kind of cool. I'm from Central Illinois, a small town surrounded by small towns. I live in a fairly new area and my parents built our house. My grandma died when I was 2 and this happened when I was 6. My room is in the basement. If you come down the stairs and take an immediate right, it's the door to my room. If you go to the left, there's a hallway. Back then, there were 2 chairs in that hallway. The way my room was set up, I could see down the hallway from my bed. So when I was 6, I woke up one morning and I could see my grandma sitting in one of those chairs just looking at me. I got up to go see her, but when I left my room, she was just gone. I was right outside my door, so I just ran up the stairs to tell my parents. They didn't believe me and told me I was just dreaming. That was 12 years ago, and I still remember exactly how I felt, and I know there was no way I could have dreamt all of that and slept walk out into the hallway. That was the only time I ever saw her, and my parents never believed me, even though I've told them the exact same story for years. However, when I was 14, my dad and I were driving around the countryside for fun. We came across a cemetery and decided to drive through it. The earliest graves were from the 1800s. We were walking around when all of a sudden we saw this girl who looked like she was straight out of the 70s. We were in the middle of nowhere. There were no other cars. She literally came out of nowhere. We both watched her walk across the cemetery. We looked at each other, and when we looked back over, she was gone. It was so scary, we immediately left and called my mom. That was 4 years ago, and she still doesn't believe us. They both still don't believe me about my grandma, but I know what I saw both days. Also, when I was 14, I was home alone and in the basement. I walked into my bathroom, which is directly across from the chairs in the hallway. Right before I turned on the light, I felt this absolutely freezing hand grab my arm. I literally screamed because it scared me so bad. I grabbed my arm where I had felt the hand, and my arm was cold to the touch. I've never told anyone that because I feel crazy saying it. I turned around and no one was there. That's happened at least one other time since then, and it also happened in that bathroom. Okay, first of all, why is the mom not believing you, especially when you had a paranormal experience with your dad? Like, you have a witness that spirits and ghosts do exist. And hopefully the cold hand grabbing your arm at the end was hopefully your grandma and not something else. But I would be freaked out. I would have to move out of the basement. I couldn't stay down there anymore. Let's read some scary Reddit stories. I used to rent a room in a basement apartment. My friend's family lived in the real house upstairs, which is how I ended up there. They have a lot of family parties. They're first-generation Filipino, so family parties are a frequent thing. One day, I was doing some homework in my room. The other 2 tenants weren't home, so I had apartment B to myself. But my friend's family was being so loud upstairs, I was having trouble focusing. So much chatter and feet moving around, it sounded like dancing was going on. I texted my friend, "You guys sound like you're really having a good time up there. I'm not really getting anything done. Can I come up?" He texts back, "No one is home. We went to Wisconsin for the weekend." I went outside, saw that no one's car was there and no lights were on in the house. And then I just went for a walk until someone else got home. Yeah, I wouldn't stay in that house by myself either. I'd be leaving. In late 2015, I was laid off from my job at the zoo and was staying with my grandparents for a couple of months. My grandparents have 2 little dogs, and because Grandpa worked nights and Grandma was away in Texas for a month, they were really glad to have someone around to feed and walk the dogs during the day. One night, I'm home alone, I'm relaxing in the tub, when all of a sudden, through the skylight in the bathroom, I can hear whispered, hushed voices that can only be coming from the back porch. I think I must be hearing things, but then both dogs start barking their heads off. My blood runs freezing cold and I leap out of the bath, pull my clothes on, and run to the porch, but whoever was there was already gone. I took a shovel and walked the perimeter of the house but found nothing. After that, Grandpa updated the security system. In 1977, an Alberta couple wanted a pump for their septic tank, and they decided to take the pump from the tank of their old abandoned farm instead of buying a new one. In doing so, they discovered an unalived body that was thrown in there. The victim's story is very horrific. He was tortured and schmexually mutilated before he was pew-pewed, then thrown in the septic tank of an abandoned farm, hoping that the crime would never be discovered. The victim was identified in 2021, but the unaliving is yet to be solved. That one is really scary, and it reminds me of that thing that happened in Los Angeles where that girl was found in the tank, like above the building. That's really scary and really sad. Let's read some more scary stories that were sent to us. I don't have a soda today, but I do have a drinkable yogurt. Have y'all ever had this before? These are so good. I like the mango one better, actually. But 30 grams of protein? Fire. Me and my parents lived in a relatively small apartment in Austria. The windows in my parents' room faced the street. So one night when I was 13 at around 3 o'clock, my mom woke up thinking that someone was ringing the door to the house. She brushed it off because she didn't continue hearing it after she woke up. She went to go get a glass of water and then she went back to her room. For some reason, my dad, who is a very deep sleeper, was also waking up. My mom asked him if he had heard the rings too, and he said yes. Suddenly, the ringing began again. For around 10 continuous minutes, the doorbell rang. My parents decided to look outside their window, but they couldn't see anybody. As soon as they walked away from the window, someone started knocking on it frantically. My parents called a few people, like for instance my grandparents, to see if it was them, but it wasn't. The knocking on the door and the window continued for around 40 more minutes. The creepiest part is that the next day, the front door lock was broken, and around that time many break-ins had happened in our area. This person also sent me a second story. When I was young, around 4 years old, I had to go to the toilet at night, so my mom took me to the toilet because I was too scared to go alone. While I was in the bathroom, my mom stood in front of our backyard door, which is made of glass. It was winter and there was a lot of snow. Suddenly, my mom noticed huge footprints in the snow and an imprint of a face on the glass door, as if someone had pressed their face against the door to look inside. Okay, y'all know that like home invasions are my worst nightmare, so these are terrifying. I would have a heart attack if someone was knocking on my door in the middle of the night, and I would have a heart attack and then move out if I saw an imprint of somebody's face on my glass door.
A kid staring at a blank television screen is a bad sign. But knowing she could have even left her crib makes it so much scarier. I'd have panicked on the spot. Then she mentions that face imprints on the glass door. That is such a clear image to hold on to. It's like someone was standing out there in the freezing cold, pressed right up against the house, watching every single thing you do. I mean, I'd never be able to glance at a dark window without thinking someone is just staring back at me. That broken door lock afterwards is just too much. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and maybe comment down below which story was your favorite. You can click on this next video, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.